Hi guys, Craig here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's episode we're going to talk about the bizarre and strange disappearance of Angela Hammond. Angela Hammond was abducted while she was using a payphone on April 4th, 1991. And nearly 22 years later, this case is still unsolved. So grab yourself a drink and let's get into today's episode. Angela Marie Hammond was born in Kansas City in Missouri on February 9th, 1971. Angela was described as a popular, outgoing, typical teenager who liked to hang around with her friends and cruise around town in her 1987 red Mustang. Angela's mother described her daughter as headstrong, very fun-loving and outgoing, and that she didn't care what anybody thought about her. If Angela wanted to do something, she just went straight out and done it. In November of 1990, Angela began dating 18-year-old Robert Schaefer, and by the January of that year she was pregnant with his child. The couple quickly got engaged and begun to prepare for the new baby who was due to be born on September 2nd, 1991. So on April 4th of 1991, Angela, Rob and her best friend Kayla spent the day together goofing around about 20 miles outside of Clinton. The trio then parted ways at around 9 p.m. to go driving around the downtown Clinton area. Angela dropped Rob off at his house at around 10 p.m. because he was going to babysit his younger brother. But the pair was planning on meeting up again later that night when Rob's parents returned home. Angela and Kayla then spent the next 75 minutes or so cruising around downtown Clinton. But by the time that Angela dropped Kayla off around 11:15 p.m, she felt absolutely exhausted and didn't want to hang out with Rob as planned. She just wanted to go home and collapse into bed. But because she didn't have a phone, she stopped to use a payphone in the parking lot of the now defunct Food Barn on East Jefferson Street, just a short distance from the Clinton Town Square. So guys, here where things start to get a little bit strange. Sometime between 11:15 and 11:30 p.m, Angela calls Rob's home to let him know that she was done for the night and was going to return home to go to bed. But during their conversation, she happened to mention that a strange man was circling the parking lot in a green pickup truck. She didn't seem too concerned until the man pulled into the parking space next to her car. He then walked into the telephone booth next to her, apparently to make a call. Angela then began to describe the truck and its driver to Rob. She says it was a beat-up green Ford driven by a dirty, scruffy-looking man with glasses and long hair. Then, bizarrely, the man left the phone booth without ever making a call. He then returned to his truck, where he pulled out a flashlight and begun rummaging around inside his vehicle. Angela at this point thought that the phone might have been broken, so Rob told her to ask the man if he needed to make a call, to which the man replied, "No, I will try back later." Both Angela and Rob thought that this was a little bit odd, but they weren't particularly alarmed, so the pair chatted away and changed the subject. But minutes later, Rob heard a scream on the other end of the telephone and then heard the sound of the phone hitting the inside of the phone booth. "I didn't need to use the phone anyway," a creepy unknown voice said before the line went completely dead. So Rob at this point was in an utter panic and rushed out of the house and began driving north towards where the phone box was situated. On his way there, he drove past a pickup truck and thought that he could hear Angela's voice crying out for help. In his panic, Rob slammed his own truck into reverse and spun around to follow the truck, and in that snap decision, he seriously damaged his transmission. He followed it south onto 2nd Street and was about to make a right turn when the engine began to die. eventually giving out a little over a mile into the chase. I mean, at this point, you couldn't make this stuff up. Rob watched helplessly as the truck sped away with Angela still inside. He then flagged down a passing motorcyclist and told her to follow the truck, but she was initially too scared and refused, and instead gave him a lift to the police station, where he reported the abduction at around midnight. God knows what must have been going through Rob's head at this point. It must have been so confusing for him. One minute he's on the phone to his fiancée, and the next he's giving chase to her kidnapper. A lot of people didn't believe Rob's version of events initially. I mean, your transmission goes. It's like something out of a Hollywood horror movie. So detectives did target Rob initially, and over the next few days, FBI agents grilled him for over 5 hours and subjected him to a polygraph test and a voice stress test, both of which Rob passed. Rob was then cleared after the investigation turned up 3 witnesses who could corroborate his story. The woman who brought him to the police station says that she saw a green pickup truck parked next to Angela's red Mustang. Another woman who lived nearby also reported seeing Angela at the phone booth standing next to what she described as a green 1969 Ford pickup truck with a mural of a water scene on its rear window. Rob would have had less than half an hour to murder his fiancée and then dispose of her body, plus removing any evidence of the crime. So I personally don't think that this is very viable. I know it might sound too Hollywood for his car to stall while giving chase, but the transmission could have been easily damaged in this instance. Angela's mother and her brother have always believed that Rob is innocent and have publicly defended him on many occasions. So because of all the witness statements, investigators began searching for the pickup truck and its driver, who was described as a young man between the ages of 20 and 35, with glasses, a beard, a moustache and dark-coloured hair. Investigators spent months tracking down 1,600 trucks that fitted the description and that were registered in the Missouri area, but they came up empty-handed. The description of the vehicle might have not been totally accurate, although it is most commonly described as a 1968 Ford pickup truck. Sergeant Paul Abbott says that it could have been older and might have not even been a Ford at all. So with Rob now ruled out, investigators began to focus on different theories: that Angela was a victim of a serial killer targeting young women in the central Missouri area. So strangely, another attack took place at 10 p.m. on January 19th, 1991. A 42-year-old woman called Trudy Derby was closing up a convenience store in Camden County when she happened to notice a suspicious-looking man standing outside. So with precaution, she decided to call her adult son and ask him to come down and close the store with her. When he arrived just a couple of minutes later, both his mother and the $220 that she normally left in the till overnight were missing. 2 days later, the woman's body was found submerged in a river and she had been shot in the back of the head. On February 27th, another 30-year-old woman disappeared after once again closing up a convenience store. Shortly after 10:15, her car was found abandoned outside the building. The janitor would go on to say that there was an unknown male customer still inside the store when he left. And 2 people that were in the area at the time reported hearing screams about the same time that she would have been expected to be exiting the building. Angela Hammond became the 3rd woman to be abducted from the Missouri area in under 3 months. So because of this, investigators met on multiple occasions to share notes on all 3 of the cases. But while most of them tended to believe that they were connected, it was impossible to say for certain. They were unable to uncover any evidence linking all of the cases together. But I personally think that it's far too much of a coincidence. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think so far. So on February 5th, 1992, the Unsolved Mysteries TV show released an episode about Angela's case. This episode garnered over 600 tips and new leads for the police, but ultimately none of these tips generated by the show would pan out or help the investigation. In March of 1992, in a crime that was oddly similar to the murder of Trudy Derby, serial killer Kenneth McDuff abducted 22-year-old Melissa Northrope and stole $250 from the convenience store where she worked, just south of Waco, Texas. He would be arrested 2 months later in the Kansas City, Missouri area, after a co-worker recognized him from a segment of America's Most Wanted. He is believed to have committed at least 9 murders in Texas between 1966 and 1992, and possibly more in other states. Now, could he have been in the Missouri area at the time of Angela's disappearance? Due to his Missouri connections, the local authorities questioned him in the case of Trudy Derby, Cheryl Kennedy, and Angela Hammond, but he totally refused to cooperate. The police sergeant of Kansas City Police Department says that he tended to believe that McDuff was not in the state at the time of the Derby and Kennedy abductions, mainly because he was actively attending school in Texas in late February. However, he may have already been living in the Kansas City area at the time of Angela's disappearance. While I was researching this case, I couldn't find any more information to tell me if he was still considered a serious suspect in Angela's disappearance or not. But I certainly think it's something to think about. Then bizarrely, in the summer of 1994, police received a tip that a 20-year-old man named Jess Rush had confessed to participating in the murder of Trudy Derby when he was just 15 years old. He also implicated his half-brother, 34-year-old Marvin Chesney, as the man who shot her in the head and then dumped her in the river. The investigation also turned up 2 more people who Jess had confessed to, which led to him and his half-brother being charged with kidnap and first-degree murder on May 1st, 1995. While awaiting trial, Rush began speaking to fellow inmates and to jailhouse lawyer Edward Thomas, in a hope that he could help himself beat these charges. Over the course of multiple conversations and numerous handwritten letters, he described how he and his half-brother and at least one other man abducted Derby from the convenience store and brought her to a barn. And in this barn they would repeatedly beat and rape her before his half-brother shot her in the head and placed her in the trunk of the car to be dumped in the river. In numerous of these letters, Rush made vague and crass references to them other bitches, other women that he and his half-brother supposedly raped and murdered. In one of these letters, he expressed relief that they burnt down the barn after killing Trudy Derby, destroying any other evidence of any other crimes. He would actually go on to say that I'm glad the police don't know everything, because if they did, I would be on death row instead of being locked up for life. Ultimately, these 2 men were never charged with any other murders, although they would remain prime suspects in Angela's case for years to come. So guys, one last name that has more recently come up in Angela's case is that of Laurie Hall, a suspected serial killer who is serving a life sentence for the murder of 15-year-old Jessica Roach. whom he murdered in 1993. Laurie Hall claims to have killed upwards of 35 women, 5 of whom were from the Missouri area. Christopher Martin, who authored a book about Laurie Hall in 2010, strongly believes that he was responsible for Angela Hammond's murder because of the resemblance to his composite sketch and for his expert skills in hiding his victims' bodies. He also claims that he abducted 2 of his victims from small towns in Missouri, which would match Angela's case. However, it's important to note that there is no solid evidence linking Hall to Angela's disappearance. Angela's disappearance has obviously devastated her family, especially Rob, who lost his fiancée and his unborn baby that night. Rob would go on to blame himself for Angela's disappearance. He said that he would always be there for her and would always take care of her. But Angela's mother would go on record and say that Rob did everything he could that night and that no one in the family blames him. Rob is now in his late 40s and has other children of his own, but he does continue to stay in touch with Angela's family, most of whom still live in small-town Missouri area, and continue to hold out hope that Angela and her unborn baby will be found safely. No one has ever been charged with Angela Hammond's disappearance, and the case to this day still remains unsolved. So guys, that was the bizarre and the strange disappearance of Angela Hammond. Let me know in the comment section below what you think happened to Angela. Personally, I have no idea. There are so many plausible options, but there is just no hard evidence linking anyone to this abduction. I guess it's just one of those cases we will never have the answer to. I just wanted to remind you once again, guys, that I have a podcast called True Crime with Craig, where I cover all of these cases in podcast form, which is really handy if you're out and about, walking the dog, on the bus, doing the dishes, and just don't have time to watch the actual video. So I would appreciate it if I leave a link in the description if you could go over and check that out. So if you liked today's video, guys, please give it a massive thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We are working our way towards 500 subscribers, and I can't thank you all enough for the support that you have given me on this channel. So I will leave it there for now, and I will see you all next week for another video. Take care. Bye.